Welcome back to another YouTube video, everyone. So today we're talking about a highly requested show, Euphoria, and at the time of filming this, the first episode of season 2 has just come out, and basically for season 2 I'm going to be reacting to it episode by episode as they come out. So in order to do that, I first need to cover season 1, and that's today's video, a deep dive into the evolution of season 1 and all the characters and my thoughts on the show as a whole. And I have to say that I have some pretty controversial opinions, some of which you may not necessarily agree with, but I think it's got to be said. And I know some of the viewership are very defensive of this show, but hear me out, okay? I don't want to start a fight. I'm not that kind of person. I just want to share my thoughts, but you want to stick till the end, trust me. And I've got a little board as well for all the different characters. The red line is symbolizing some sort of familial relationship, and then the black lines are for some sort of romantic or sexual connection between the characters. I thought it would be nice to have a visual. I did this in my last video for 90210, and you guys really liked having a little board, so I'm doing it again, and if you like it, let me know and we'll keep doing it. This show is quite controversial, and people, if they like it, will defend it till the ends of the earth, even if some of the criticism against the show is valid. And I don't hate the show, okay? I enjoyed some of it more than I thought I would. It had some really good scenes, some really good characters, and the concept of it is actually quite cool. I like the idea, it has a lot of potential, but there are some really disturbing things about Euphoria that made me, to be honest, extremely uncomfortable, and I don't think this gets talked about enough. In fact, I think people are avoiding discussing this because they like the show, and it's weird to me because I don't get bothered about TV shows. For me, it's like, it's a show. Who cares? Like, it's fine to criticize it and it's okay if we disagree, but I know that people can be very touchy about their favorite shows or movies. Even though it's covering fictional characters, people can be really upset if you criticize. So make sure you subscribe because, like I said, I'm going to be reacting to every single episode, and make sure you follow my TikTok because I'm posting on there like every day and doing reactions to the shows I'm watching and stuff. But also, I dyed my hair a bit more red. Do you guys like it? I think today we're channeling very much Ariel from The Little Mermaid vibes, which I really like, especially with this top. I think it really fits the whole theme. Oh, and I've got glittery eyeshadow on because, you know, Euphoria inspired bringing it back again apparently, which is cool, but I've been on this for years, way before Euphoria. I was like, guys, glittery eyeshadow, sparkly eyeliner, and then Euphoria came out and everyone was like, oh my god, sparkly eye makeup looks so good, and I was like, I know, that's what I've been trying to tell you guys. So it has a very beautiful aesthetic, this show. Great visuals, great cinematography. It's like one big music video, great lighting and cool artistic things about it that I do appreciate. But sometimes people get so wrapped up in the aesthetic of the show. One of my questions is whether teenagers should actually watch Euphoria and whether that's appropriate, because maybe it makes them feel seen, validated, maybe it helps them with stuff going on in their life and makes them feel supported, or maybe Euphoria reinforces that this behavior of teenagers doing drugs or being in toxic relationships is normal and it's okay, and maybe it keeps perpetuating that cycle rather than helping by making it seem really normal, and every teenage experience is like this. So does this show actually help you, or does it make stuff worse? That's one of my key questions that I had in mind when watching the show. And on the first episode I was like, oh, I see where they're going with this. I don't think this is too bad. I'm liking it more than I thought I would. I did notice the constant nudity and very graphic sex stuff. I was like, is this actually necessary though? Because it's fine for me because I'm 19, but I was imagining if I was like 14 and watching this, or 16, how would I feel? Would I enjoy it or would I be uncomfortable? I think my teenage self, if I watched this, would be very disturbed. So it definitely is a show for adults and not for kids, because kids should not be watching this stuff. Ironically, it's a show about teenagers, so teenagers will want to watch it, and a lot of teenagers do, but hilariously and ironically, teenagers should not be watching it. But this poses the question then, who is watching this show? If it's adults because it's too weird and inappropriate for kids to be watching, that makes it even worse, because that means adults are watching a show all about teenagers doing drugs and having sex where a lot of body parts are showing, and it's quite adult sex, even though they're kids, they're underage, they're minors, and adults are consuming this content, seeing what we're meant to believe are teenagers doing those things. And when you think of it that way, it's extremely uncomfortable. These people are not 18 plus, they're not in university. I honestly would have no issue with this show at all if it was set in a time when the characters were older, maybe 18, 19, 20, because they could still be messy and immature, but they would be past the age of 18, and I would just feel more comfortable knowing they were young adults doing those things. Why does everything have to be set in high school anyway? To be honest, it's overrated. When teenagers are consuming this kind of content, because trust me, they are, it's about them and their experiences, of course they'll watch it. What they're seeing are teenagers being shallow and people facing addictions or becoming cam girls for money, and you cannot tell me that's not going to affect at least some teenagers negatively, because they'll be watching it thinking, oh, I guess this is normal, and they're seeing those behaviors play out on screen, and naturally they want to mimic and copy because it normalizes it. And that's literally how it works when you're a teenager. You start copying something if you're seeing it happen a lot. That's my problem with Euphoria, is it's meant to be kind of insightful and make you feel something, open up those difficult conversations, but I just don't see why it's necessary to have these teenagers showing so much skin. Why show the sex scene? Why not just leave it to the imagination, fade to black? Why do you need to show it? And why do you need to show so many close-ups of, let's say, their parts down there, or show their nudes being leaked? Why is it necessary? We don't need to see that. We don't want to see that. It's freaking weird, especially because the actors are in their 20s. One of them's like 30, and that makes it even weirder because it's sexualizing them and glamorizing what's happening, because we're seeing these very beautiful older actors in their 20s playing these teenagers who are going through very messy experiences. And it's far worse than shows like Pretty Little Liars or Gossip Girl, simply because of how explicit and how graphic it is. And that's my big problem with the show. Like, that's why I can't say I love it, because it seriously bothers me, and Hollywood already has this pattern of sexualizing kids and teenagers, so I don't like it. It's gross. And it's funny too, because there's such a double standard. Everyone was criticizing Cuties when it came out because it was a movie that was sexualizing kids. But what's funny to me is teenagers really aren't that different from, let's say, 10-year-olds. Sure, they're a bit older, they're going through puberty, but they're still not adults. Yeah, I'm still a teenager technically, but I'm past the age of 18, and I was a very different person at, let's say, 16 than I was at 19. With how explicit the stuff is that happens in this show, you would not be legally allowed to have kids who are the appropriate age playing those characters. They wouldn't be allowed to. Let's say they were 16, that wouldn't even be okay. Euphoria technically is meant to show the struggles of teenagers who are growing up online. I think for a lot of people this show has a lot of personal meaning to them. They're very attached to it because maybe for some people it does reflect their experience as a teenager, because maybe they really were going through it and they were having experiences like that. But I didn't realize how protective some of the fans are of the show, and also how young some of the fans are of this show, until I did a video on TikTok, and basically I'll share it here actually. But it was just a fun video, and I wasn't even criticizing the show. I was just making a joke, because I noticed that in the main cast, you've got like Nate and Cassie and Maddy, and they're all either jocks or cheerleaders, and I found that quite funny. Obviously, Rue isn't a cheerleader, Jules isn't a cheerleader, but I found it kind of hilarious that they're still subtly continuing this cheerleader jock trope, because we see it so much in American media, and it's useless too, because like we're so sick of seeing it. And I know it's not an important part of the show that they're jocks or cheerleaders, but I was just like, oh my gosh, we're seeing this again. Like, what is up with the media's obsession with cheerleaders and jocks? I would love to know. I didn't even put much thought into the post, but then it went viral and it's on like 160,000 views as of now. And I was like, why, first of all? But second of all, what's so weird is there were thousands of comments coming in from fans of the show, some of which are very young, which were really rude and really nasty, defending the show hardcore, even though the show wasn't being attacked in the first place. And I thought to myself, geez, if these are the kinds of people that like this show and this is what the fan base is like, I'm not sure how much I like this show, because, or maybe TikTok's just like that in general, but I was like, geez, people are so sensitive nowadays on the internet. People were wanting to fight. They were like, don't you know that Rue's the main character and not these other ones? And I was like, yeah, I know, obviously, but I still consider those other characters central, key, important main characters. I know Rue was the main character, but part of the main cast, I would consider all these people. People were like, do you want to fight? Do you want to fight? And I was like, no. Aside from the fans being weirdly aggressive about their favorite show, it's odd that the excuse people use to justify all of the nudity and sex in the show is, oh, but it's real, it's accurate, it's raw. That's so dumb. Like, even Sydney Sweeney, who plays Cassie, said that she was okay with doing the topless scenes because she said, if I was a teenager and I was having sex, I would have my top off, right? Or I'd be naked. That's kind of the point. And what I find so dumb about that is, I understand where she's coming from, of course, no hate to her, but nothing in movies is actually real and raw. Everything is edited, everything has an intention, and there's something extremely creepy about the thought of a group of adults and grown men writing the show and saying, yeah, let's put in this sex scene with this teenager and let's show these two in the bathroom together doing A, B, and C, and then getting the actress to pose for these nude photos and then editing those clips together. And they know these characters are meant to be teenagers. Like, it's not teenagers working on the show behind the scenes, it's grown adults writing it, creating it. I know they're saying it's real, but nothing's really real in entertainment because it's edited, it's fake, it's curated. You could have the main character look at her phone like this and go, oh my gosh, someone leaked a nude of me, how terrible. And you don't need to show it, you can just show her looking at her phone. Showing it just makes it weird and kind of glorifies it, and it is uncomfortable because you can imagine the sort of creeps, the 50-year-old men that are watching this show and screenshotting photos of Sydney Sweeney naked, but she's meant to be a teenager. Do you know what I mean? When you really actually think about it, it's like this cesspool of uncomfortableness. And I'm not going to apologize for saying this. I strongly feel this way. My other problem with the show that really bugs me is, where are the really dark-skinned black women? We have this guy, McKay. Obviously, we've got Zendaya, but she's biracial. She's not like a dark-skinned black woman, and that's a very specific thing that needs to be included in the show because it's meant to be this look at real problems teenagers are facing. Where's the actual representation for those women? They're literally not here. There are so many white people in this cast. So now I've got into and got out of the way those key problems, I do want to recap the show because I actually have a lot of good things to say about it. It's obviously not all bad. It was written by Sam Levinson, who based the series on his experiences as a teenager, including his struggles with anxiety, depression, and drug addiction. In the main cast, we've got Zendaya, who's Rue Bennett, basically trying to find her place in the world even though she's got a serious drug addiction. She went to rehab and she's trying to figure herself out. I like Zendaya as Rue. I think she plays the role really well, and you can tell that Rue really is damaged goods and she's got a lot going on in her head, a lot of trauma, and she's had a lot of difficult experiences in her life, like her dad was sick. And I do also enjoy seeing her relationship with Jules on screen, but I do have to say that relationship does seem very kind of codependent. It's not the most healthy, like they rely on each other too much and are overly attached to each other considering they haven't even known each other for very long. But it's still quite a realistic teen relationship, I think, because often they're not the healthiest because you're still figuring stuff out. But then we've got Sydney as Cassie, who's Lexi's sister, and I think Cassie's probably the best character in the show, if not one of the best. And Lexi, her sister, we need to see more of. Like, I need to have a whole episode dedicated to her in season 2 because she has so much potential. I feel like she's the most realistic teenager. We've got Fezco, who's a local drug dealer with a close relationship to Rue, and he's an interesting one because he's actually a nice guy underneath everything, and he starts prioritizing being a friend to Rue over being a drug dealer, which I appreciated. And even though some drug dealers are obviously very mean, some are just damaged and had a bad card in life like him, I do think he's a good guy. He's just got a lot of inner demons and he genuinely does care about Rue. We've got Cal Jacobs, who's Nate's father, that's Nate there, and he is hiding a lot of secrets from his family. He's got this second life he doesn't want anyone to know about. And then we've got Nate, who's basically your typical high school bully, and he's in a relationship with this girl, Maddy, and they've got this really volatile, unhealthy relationship. We've got Kat. Where's Kat? Where is Kat? Oh my god, I had a photo for her. Where did it go? That is so upsetting. I swear I printed off a photo, but I don't know where it is. Just imagine Kat's photos there, okay? I have no idea where her photo went. I had a photo. That is actually so bizarre because I know I had one. Just give me a sec. I swear, like I printed it out, cut it out. Okay, so basically I have no idea where Kat went, and she has a lot of body insecurities, but she learns to embrace her feminine power throughout the show, which is a really interesting idea and actually really popularized the show, I think, because it hadn't really been done before in that way. And we've got Gia, who's Rue's younger sister, and she's really struggling seeing Rue forming this dependency on drugs. And we've got Jules, obviously, who starts to form this romantic relationship with Rue, and Jules is a transgender girl who's new to town. And we've got McKay, who's a young football player and he's Cassie's boyfriend, and he's having a lot of difficulties adjusting to college, so he's a little bit older. Oh yeah, this guy, who I'll get into later because he's not as important, but he's kind of tied to Nate a lot. So we'll start off with the season 1 pilot. It's narrated by Rue throughout basically the whole show because she is the main of main characters, and she looks at her life when she was younger and says that basically she's always been depressed, she's always struggled, and even though she's gotten out of rehab, she still very much has intentions to do drugs and is still doing them. I think it's funny because they tried to make Zendaya look as messy as possible and as unwell as possible, but they still just couldn't quite manage it. Actually, with all of these actors, they're all meant to be going through stuff and struggling, but I feel like they look so clean and put together still. Like Maddy will be in this full-on abusive thing with Nate and she's still got a full face of makeup on, looking fabulous, outfit on point, and yeah, it's quite odd. Rue is forced to do a test by her mum to basically show that she's clean and she hasn't been doing drugs, and Rue isn't clean, so she goes to her friend Lexi's house and basically asks Lexi if she can borrow her pee. And Lexi, you can tell, feels really uncomfortable with this relationship because sometimes Rue will be like, I need you, but then at other points Rue doesn't even act like she's Lexi's friend. Again, I need to know more about what's going on with Lexi. I feel like she's so underutilized. Like everyone, I think it's her sister, keeps saying, oh, you're shy, Lexi, you're shy. But she's not shy, she just seems more soft-spoken and introverted. But I think shy implies like a lack of confidence or something, or being antisocial, and that's not really what she is. She just seems more thoughtful, so we really need to see more of this character. But anyway, Jules is new to town and she's got this dating app thing in her phone, and she likes to hook up with basically whoever. She has a lot of one-night stands. She's got a lot of trauma associated with her body because, you know, with her being transgender and everything, she was told that her body wasn't hers to control, so it sort of played into her relationships where it's like, oh well, I'll just do whatever with my body because it was never valued by other people. She starts to hook up with this guy in a motel. He's a married man, and what she doesn't realize at the time is that the married man is him, Cal, and he's actually Nate's father, so he's obviously a lot older than her. Because of this uncomfortable age gap, she's literally a minor. And then we see a scene flashing to McKay, who's hanging out with all his friends, and they're looking at these photos of Cassie. There are like 10 of them, and she's nude or topless or almost nude, like on the verge of being fully naked, and they're all jeering, being like, oh, she's so hot, or making fun of her. But McKay feels uncomfortable because he does seem to like her more than the other guys do. Like, he has at least some feelings towards her. McKay is an interesting character. He's one of those guys that's a misogynist, but you don't realize he's a misogynist straight away. I think he's the most common type of woman hater because it's not obvious at first. You meet a lot of guys like this who are the nice guy, who say they're appreciative of women and that they respect women, that they're a feminist, that they care about you, or they don't even realize that they've got all these internalized problems with women. So McKay doesn't seem that bad because his other friends are being blatantly rude about Cassie's body or disrespectful, and he's a bit more like, oh guys, maybe we shouldn't do that. But yet there's this underlying misogyny there that I don't think he's conscious of, because with someone like McKay, he starts developing a genuine interest in Cassie, and it is sweet. And I do feel like McKay has some good sides because he was raised by a really mean dad, and he was told to bottle up all his anger. He's in a very aggressive friend group, and he would have dealt with a lot of difficult experiences, and so you do feel bad for him. But at the same time, the way that he treats Cassie in their relationship is not good. And he's the kind of guy, perfect example, where he tells Cassie that she kind of has a reputation for being a slut, and so he doesn't feel comfortable being public about being her boyfriend. He's not proud of her at all. He's shaming her as if somehow she's not valuable. But then at the same time, he'll text her and be like, I'm so horny, give me nudes. So you're shaming her, but then you're asking her to do something that you're shaming her for. And that's kind of classic McKay behavior. What made me so uncomfortable too was we see these nude photos of Cassie flash up on the screen. It's not just that we see the guys looking at them, we see the photos ourselves, and that's literally child pornography. She's under 18, and oh my god, it's so disgusting. Basically, these two hit it off at the party. He tells her she's the most beautiful girl he's ever seen, and Cassie's like, oh my god. Cassie needs to get some self-worth. She is the most realistic teenager. I think her and Lexi, they feel like real people because so many girls are like this, where they really crave male validation, and Cassie's acting as if, oh my god, I could never tell myself I'm beautiful, and this guy's saying I'm beautiful. I'm just obsessed with him. And it's clear that she falls in love with every guy she's ever dated. Like, she's got a real problem. She's trying to fill a void. She doesn't have any standards. She doesn't care if they're nice, mean, whatever. As long as they're showing some kind of interest in her, she just gets so attached. And this happens with McKay because Cassie and him start hitting it off. They start flirting. As they're starting to get a bit steamy, he starts choking her in this kind of erotic way, but he didn't ask for her permission or anything, and it came out of nowhere. It was their first sexual experience anyway, and Cassie's like, oh my god, what is going on? And she freaks out, and he's like, oh, I thought you would have liked that. And she's like, why would I like that? And this is something the show tries to address, to do with sex and violence. Here's something positive. I actually think this is a good scene. I don't like how much nudity there is. I think you could cut back on that a bit tastefully with the camera angles maybe, because like there were boobs out and all this, it was just a bit much. But what I do love about the scene, and the reason I'm glad it's there, is this is not talked about enough. So many people have pornography addictions and it's swept under the rug, or people are ashamed and so they don't want to talk about it. But it's a genuinely huge problem, and it can really affect people's relationships. And I think now more than ever it's important to be having these conversations because of COVID and everything. People were lonely, and there was a lot of online stuff going on where people were trying to, you know, entertain themselves, or they wanted a relationship but they couldn't go out to meet anyone. And so now I think it's worse than ever. So it is good to be talking about the very negative side effects of porn, the way it relates to your relationship with your body and your sex drive and the way that you view women. And there are some really dark sides of the industry that people don't want to talk about. So I'm glad that this scene was shown. We cut to Kat and three boys smoking weed, and you see from what we know about Kat so far that she really struggles to feel empowered, and she keeps trying to prove herself to people. She has very low self-esteem because she doesn't feel great about her body, and she hasn't always been treated the best, even in her friendship with Maddy. These two are really close, but Maddy kind of uses Kat as her emotional support animal, and Kat's just there almost as the sidekick, and I think she's sick sick of being the sidekick, but she's hanging out with these guys and they tell her to take her top off and she feels kind of pressurized, but she does it. And this is the first step of Kat becoming a bit adventurous, a bit bold, but not in a good way, because it's formed through really negative circumstances of feeling pressurized and not good enough. This is when we're introduced to Nate and Maddy's relationship, because Nate sees Maddy hooking up with someone else in the pool, and this is kind of a trend throughout the show of them trying to flirt with other people to make each other jealous. It's an extremely unhealthy, possessive relationship. Nate, we know, is a classic misogynist. He doesn't like body hair. He has very specific things that he wants in a woman, like this type of nose, this type of neck, these types of clothes. He doesn't want a girl to be really sexually experienced. He wants her to be a virgin because he wants to fully possess her and he wants to feel like he can protect her. He's got a lot of control issues and a lot of insecurities. And as for Maddy, she's obviously not half as messed up as Nate is, but she can be really insecure and also really shallow, and she likes to kind of provoke him and rile him up. So they're both making each other worse in a sense, and Nate definitely brings out Maddy's worst sides, and they really don't make each other happy. But throughout the show, they just try and trigger each other. They're on and off. Now, I think this is important to show. It's important to depict an unhealthy relationship. The problem is the way that so many teenagers watching the show are reacting to it, because they're saying stuff like, oh, but they're so cute. They've got so much chemistry though, completely missing the damn point. This is a toxic, emotionally abusive, and then becomes physically abusive relationship. You were not meant to find this cute. You were meant to find it dangerous. And the only reason people are finding it even a little bit cute is because these two are attractive. And I can guarantee if these two were ugly, you guys would not want to be having this conversation. You would be, in fact, you guys would be saying how gross it is, but because you find him attractive and you want to sleep with the actor or whatever, you're saying that it's okay, he's all forgiven, even though he's a genuinely awful, evil guy 90% of the time. And to be honest, Maddy isn't an angel either. She's pretty unlikable at points. I mean, to be fair, I do find her quite funny, but I don't love her. I'm pretty neutral towards her, but I don't really have any strong feelings. If you're saying that you genuinely love this couple and you want them to work things out, hun, you need to get some therapy. You need to talk to a counselor. Get some help, please.
Stop it. Get some help.
Anyway, Nate's getting really annoyed because he sees her in the pool with a guy. He gets triggered. He goes into the kitchen and he sees Jules in the kitchen. And Nate is looking for someone to pick on, so he singles out Jules because he hasn't seen her before, and he starts bullying her, being really mean. He's such a coward and he's so disgusting. Like, I genuinely despise this man. He's being awful to her. And then Jules gets so angry that she whips out a knife and points it at him. And honestly, Nate is such a coward. He's such a loser, because he backs right down and he's like, oh, I was just joking, I didn't mean anything by it. He completely freaks out, even though he could knock her out in one blow if he wanted to. He genuinely is such a weakling. So I'm glad she stood up for herself, and I actually thought that was a really good scene because she is not having his shit. She's like, you come near me, you're gonna get stabbed, which I appreciate. But honestly, Nate is the representation of toxic masculinity. I think he and Cassie are the best characters in the show because they're just so real. Also, he's all talk, no action. He's like, I'm gonna threaten you. But then as soon as the person bites back, he's like, I'm scared, I'm scared. Also, Jacob Elordi, I think is his name, he plays Nate. He has come so far since The Kissing Booth. That was such a shit movie, and he played kind of a toxic character there, except his toxic traits in The Kissing Booth were really romanticized because he's like the main love interest, whereas in this, he's a lot more evil, and he's not really glamorized. He's just shown to be a genuinely awful person. He is the main villain of this show, but wow. Jacob completely ate this role. I had no idea how talented he was at acting because The Kissing Booth was so terrible. It's kind of hard to pull that off, but honestly, he gave this role his all, and I have a new level of respect for the actor because I thought he just constantly smashed so many scenes. And Rue is really impressed by Jules standing up for herself at this party, and these two bond. They start getting along, and it's clear that Rue is starting to develop these romantic feelings for Jules, but Rue starts to develop those feelings first. I think Jules is more just considering Rue a friend. Episode 2 is more centered specifically on Nate and giving his backstory, because they kind of do this throughout the show. show. I really like it. They focus in on one character at a time and each kind of has their own episode. But episode 2 shows a lot about Nate's life, and it talks about how when he was 11, he discovers his dad Cal's porn collection. His father has a collection of videos that he made himself featuring him being with young gay men and trans women, and it's kind of his dad's secret interest on the side that no one knows about. It was really disturbing though because of the fact that Nate was 11 when he discovered this, and honestly it's one of the things I don't like about the show is just how unnecessarily dark it is sometimes. I think like it goes so far with it, there's no subtlety, it's just really dark and heavy like every scene. But as a result, when Nate enters high school, he has a lot of anger issues, a lot of insecurities with his body. He doesn't actually like seeing other guys naked either because it makes him uncomfortable. And he's obsessed with getting fit, which I think was happening because of maybe the stuff that he was seeing in porn. It was making him think he needed to look a certain way, so he gets really ripped. But he has a whole list of things he likes and doesn't like about women, and they're all physical things. None of them are to do with the girl's personality, they're just all physical stuff. I felt bad. I thought that his story was very compelling and it made me see him in a new light, and I just felt really awful for him, honestly. In the present, Nate breaks into Tyler's house. This is Tyler here. Tyler was the guy who was hooking up with Maddy in the pool, and so Nate breaks into his house and beats the crap out of this guy. He accuses this guy of raping Maddy, which wasn't even what had happened. On the first day of school, Rue is asked to tell a 5-minute story about what happened in her summer, which was so ridiculous to me because it's a small town, so surely the teacher knows that Rue was in rehab, and even if she didn't, a 5-minute story? Is everyone just going to sit there and listen? And Rue doesn't want to, and she keeps being pushed to tell this story, and she breaks down because obviously her summer was not exactly exciting. Kat discovers that there was this video of her having sex at McKay's party, and it's circulating online and getting a lot of views. And again, child pornography, what the hell? We kind of see sections of the video too. Why do we need to see it? It's genuinely so gross. But she realizes she can make money performing as a cam girl because there are a lot of guys online, random men, who are seeing this video and saying how hot she is. And it is depicted as this empowering thing, and that's where my problem comes in. It's not really made clear that this is the bad thing for her to do and this is disturbing and this is exploitation, because she's like 16 and she's out here making all these videos of herself twerking and stuff and putting it online, and these grown men are paying to talk to her online or see her videos or photos of her feet or whatever it is they want. And she's not meant to be doing this, she's not allowed to legally, but she's doing it. And it's kind of depicted as this empowering coming of age thing, like she's finally stepping into her power and she's growing in confidence or something. They just didn't make it clear that it was wrong. I don't think they really executed it very well because it made it seem like they were supporting her actions or encouraging the teenagers watching the show to do the same thing. Jules does a lot of stuff online. That's how she meets a lot of these men. But she starts talking to this guy online and is genuinely forming feelings for him and even sends him a few sort of sexy photos, and she actually asks Rue for help at some point to pose for these photos and help take them of her and stuff, even though she knows nothing about him. And what we find out later is the guy is actually Nate, and she pulled a knife on him at the party, right? These two hate each other, but she doesn't know that. Then we flip to McKay and Cassie. These two are still dating and spending time together, but often Cassie is just being very sexual with him rather than actually having a conversation like you would in a relationship. And it kind of annoys McKay at points because he's like, why can't we just have a real conversation and talk about real things? And Cassie's really upset by this, and it made me realize that she's been told her whole life that her value is in her physical appearance. And actually later in Cassie's episode, which is I think one of the best episodes, we see how Cassie was often groped by distant family members or told you'll be a real heartbreaker when you grow up all the time, and all those comments made her think that her value lay in her looks and her physical appearance, and so she doesn't think she's good for anything else. And I think this was meant to be symbolic of, in general, how women are taught that all we're good for is to be attractive. In episode 3, Jules like I said, is chatting online with this guy. She doesn't realize it's Nate. And this was one of my favorite storylines, simply because this is genuinely realistic. And I think every teenager goes through some sort of experience nowadays where they're texting with someone and they either forget who they're texting, or they like to imagine it's someone else, or it's some sort of Tinder situation or catfishing situation, or even just texting their crush, right? More than they're talking to them in person. People nowadays can be quite antisocial and quite shy, and they want to just talk to people online rather than engaging with them in person, and people may be losing their social skills as a result of having their phones. There are many storylines in this show that to me are just a bit ridiculous. Like, my high school was nothing like Euphoria. My high school experiences were not even close to Euphoria, so I can't relate to any of this. The only thing I can relate to is maybe a few things that happened to Cassie, only being valued for her physical appearance, for sure. And I can relate to the idea of people becoming weirdly antisocial and not knowing how to talk to the opposite sex anymore. And I think that is very real. So I'm glad this was in the show, because it's actually very realistic, because Jules has no idea who this guy is, but she's saying she's falling for him even though they've never met before. We learn a lot about Kat's backstory this episode too, about how she wrote fan fiction, about how she was dating this guy Daniel when she was younger, like in 6th grade, but then she gained a bunch of weight and he didn't want to be with her anymore, and how that affected her view of herself. But in the present, she's still hosting these cam sessions, and she uses the money she gets to buy a new wardrobe. And she's having all these sexual fantasies too about random guys. I understand that she's wanting to explore her sexuality, because it was made into a really big deal that she was a virgin and it was bothering her, so she wanted to get that out the way. But now she's kind of getting a bit out of control with it. And people would think she was becoming more confident or having a glow up, but I think what's actually happening is she's losing her innocence, and she keeps trying to be someone she's not. So I don't think it's a good thing. Jules, in the same episode, tells Rue that she doesn't want to be friends with her anymore if Rue keeps doing drugs. And this is where we realize that Rue is almost making Jules her new addiction rather than the drugs. So their relationship isn't great, because even if Rue manages to take a step back from the drugs, she's only doing it because of Jules. The only reason she's keeping her shit together even a little bit is because of this relationship, and she's becoming too dependent on Jules. And even later, when these two are officially together, they get matching tattoos on the inside of their mouth or something. It's very weird. Like, they're a bit too enmeshed, I think, to be healthy. And also, Rue hasn't gotten over her addiction. She steals pills from Jules's kitchen. It's not great. And meanwhile, Maddy is shocked because she finds a bunch of dick pics on Nate's phone, and she's like, what the hell? And she asks, I think, for Kat's advice, and Kat says, well, sexuality is a spectrum. So Maddy's thinking, wait, does Nate like guys, and is he not telling me? She just doesn't understand what's going on, especially because he has this big macho facade. She's thinking, is that covering for something? And poor Maddy is so confused, she doesn't know what to do. And meanwhile, Rue goes and asks Fez for drugs. It's a small town, so there aren't many places to get these drugs, but he actually refuses because he cares about her too much as a friend to let her do that to herself. And she's so angry at him because she can't think straight, obviously. Jules had this plan to go and meet this guy that she'd been texting, and Jules doesn't know anything about the guy she's been texting, but she knows he's called Tyler. And obviously it's actually Nate, but she thinks he's called Tyler. You know what's so weird though? You might not realize this, but this guy's actually called Tyler. She's not texting him. Could that be a coincidence, you ask? No, because that's the thing with Nate. He has genius level abilities, and he's like a bit of a mastermind, more than is normal or healthy, I think, for someone of his age, because you just see how disturbed he is, because he knows 100% what he's doing. We learn that Jules was admitted to a psychiatric hospital because of her gender dysphoria and self-harming. And honestly, her mum was so awful because she's so upset, and her mum doesn't even talk to her. She just lets Jules into the hospital, and Jules looks around and then realizes she's going to be staying there. And then she turns around to go to her mum and have a cry, but her mum's locked herself behind this door and isn't even like saying goodbye or anything, and it was just awful. So later Jules begins transitioning, and I have to say that I like that Jules is treated like any other kid whose story is worth hearing rather than the trans character, you know? I feel like Jules is given her own kind of story, which is nice. But Then they have this carnival, which is such an entertaining episode because you can see how these people in this small town have nothing to do because they're all looking forward to this carnival that honestly looks terrible. But at this carnival, Nate and Maddy have another argument, surprise, surprise, what's new, because they're the toxic couple. But then after she insults his family, triggering him, which she shouldn't have done, to be fair, it wasn't nice, but he grabs her throat so hard. And that was not on because the actor's actually a handsome guy, but he's very tall and big and very strong, and she's really small, and it was so messed up. There is no excuse for that. Like, she would never physically touch him because she literally can't. It's not a fair fight. So that was so wrong, and now it's even more violent than it was before because now it's like physically violent. McKay ends up insulting Cassie inadvertently by not wanting to acknowledge that she's his girlfriend. They're at this carnival and McKay sees Nate there, who's his jock pal, and because he's embarrassed and he doesn't want Nate to judge him, he then pretends that he and Cassie are just chilling and they're nothing serious, even though they just said their I love yous. And you can tell that Cassie feels so undervalued, so unappreciated. And I thought that scene was excellent because this happens so often to teenage girls, I think, where maybe we mature a bit faster than the guys in our school, and so we expect more from them, or we're ready for what they're not ready for, and so they're just not on the same page as us. And I kind of felt like that was the situation there because she's just more mature than him, and he is so weak. He's such a kid. Like, he is so focused on his reputation much more than her. And the worst part is it's not for a valid reason. It's that he thinks of her as like a whore, a slut, and he doesn't feel proud that she's his girlfriend. Cassie then flirts with Kat's childhood sweetheart Daniel, the one who dumped Kat because she got fat. Jules meets this guy at the carnival and she recognizes him, the married man, the grown man that she slept with, and she's like, oh my god, wait, he's Nate's dad. He freaks out when he sees her too. He's like, oh my god, because he thought she was older. She said she was 22, but she's actually like 16, so he's like, oh my god, I'm a criminal. Ooh. Kat hangs out with a classmate, Ethan, who she's been talking to for a while. These two had been one of the more positive parts of the show, one of the more innocent, light parts, because they were just chilling and having this really sweet relationship, and they actually have so much chemistry as well. I genuinely like them, but unfortunately in this episode their relationship is kind of tarnished and not as cute anymore because Kat becomes really jealous when she thinks he's flirting with another girl. He took her to the carnival to hang out with her. He's making an effort with her, and then she just disappears in him, and it was genuinely so awful. And thing is, I want to like Kat. I want to root for her. I think it's cool that she's learning to weaponize her sexuality and stuff and take advantage of it, but the whole cam girl thing is honestly so disturbing, and she's turning into a proper bitch and really immature and really full of herself, and it just made me so sad to see her turning out like this because I really liked her at the beginning of the show. But honestly, I can't make excuses for her. She's just being so lame. But then because she's on a bit of a rebound, she ends up sleeping with this much older boy again. Why? Ew, creepy, gross. But then Rue's at this carnival too. She looks for her sister Gia, and Gia is stoned and she's an addict, but she doesn't want her sister going down that same path too, so she's worried that she's had a bad influence on her sister. Then after the carnival, Jules wants to meet up with the guy she's been texting, who she thinks is called Tyler. So she meets up with this guy and discovers that it's Nate, who she actually hates, and she's like, oh my god. And Nate's trying to be all flirtatious with her and kiss her and stuff, but she's like, I'm sorry, I don't trust you. This is too weird. Like, I liked you online, but I don't even like you in person. And then Nate suddenly switches on her, and he says that he's going to report the nudes Jules sent him as child pornography unless she keeps quiet about her relationship with his father, because now Nate knows that Jules slept with his father. So Jules is really upset, so she goes to Rue and she's like, look Rue, you were right, I shouldn't have been talking to this random guy. I didn't know. You're right, it wasn't safe, it was a mistake. And she realizes that Rue does care about her way more than this Nate guy ever did, and so she kisses Rue. In episode 5 we get a lot of insight into Maddy's character, who previously just seems like a bit of a shallow, mean girl. There's not much substance to her necessarily, but we learn more about her, and we learn that as a child Maddy loved to compete in beauty pageants, but then her mother didn't want her to do it anymore because they heard about this molestation case, and Maddy didn't want to be one of those kids. Well, actually, she wasn't too bothered. She was actually bummed she missed out on the pageants. And years later, she lies to Nate about being a virgin before they began a relationship because she knows that's important to him. And we hear that actually what happened was that a 40-year-old man slept with her and took her virginity when she was 14 or 15, but it's okay because she was in control. That's literally said. Oh, it was fine though because she was in control. That's disgusting. That's my problem with the show. See, it's not being educational or resonating with the teenage experience. It's just being dang creepy. Maddy's trying to hide these bruises on her neck that Nate put on her, but she can't hide them. She passes out at school because she's a mess. And then there's this whole investigation with the police and they're trying to get photos of her neck bruises and everything's getting really bad. And Maddy denies that Nate hurt her because she's scared. And then Nate denies that he hurt her and said that she's crazy. And he's basically sugarcoating it because he's complimenting her, but then he's also saying, I hate this girl and she's crazy and she cheated on me and she's a slut and she lies about stuff. Oh, but don't be mean to her, she's great. So he's basically trying to manipulate the police into thinking that he's the good guy in this situation. But Maddy's mum is so worried and she's like, oh my God, Han, your boyfriend was abusing you. We need to press charges. In episode 6, we learn about in the present day, Nate is suspended from school because of this whole him being an abuser thing going down. And so Nate breaks into Tyler's apartment. As you can see in the photo here, the guy was looking like a real mess because he'd been beaten up. He's in a neck brace and everything. And when he sees Nate, he freaks out and he's like, please don't beat me up again, basically. Nate says, look, I need you to confess to choking Maddy because otherwise I'm going to go down as an abusive boyfriend. So he blackmails the guy into doing that and pressurizes him. So the guy does it. He blackmails Jules into telling the police that she witnessed this attack happen so that there's an alibi, and so Nate looks good to go. He planned this shit out. To be fair, I know he's a dick and everything, but you've got to give credit where credit's due. He's pretty intelligent. Not only is he mean, but he's also smart too, which makes it worse because he's actually like a worthy villain, you know? But then he arrives at the Halloween party and his costume is to dress as a prison inmate. It's like he's making fun of the fact that he knows he's a criminal, but no one will ever be able to catch him, which is honestly genius and also a bit scary how cocky he is, to be honest. Like, something's seriously wrong with this guy. He's honestly, in season 2, he is going to end up in jail one day for killing someone. Like, seriously, he's dangerous. But Kat, meanwhile, where is she? She's not there. Oh God, she keeps gaining popularity as a cam girl and she's like,
oh my God, I'm a bad bitch. All these grown men want to sleep with me. I'm so amazing.
It is so uncomfortable to watch. Like, at one point I had to skip. It was just gross. She's on this phone call with this guy because he keeps paying her constantly, just all the time. And he literally takes off his trousers in front of her and starts touching himself, and it was just so disgusting. I just cannot with this show. It's not my cup of tea, okay? I don't like watching this kind of stuff. Cassie attends the Halloween party with McKay and they're getting on better terms now. But suddenly, as they're starting to make out and stuff and they're both kind of naked, a bunch of fraternity guys come in and they completely harass McKay and chuck him on the ground and are yelling at them, and Cassie's screaming, and it's extremely disturbing because McKay starts crying. You can tell that he feels really embarrassed and kind of exploited because, you know, he and Cassie were naked and everything. When he comes out of the bathroom, I was feeling bad for him, but immediately any feelings of feeling sorry for him I had just left. Then he's like, oh, why is your shirt on? And she's like, well, that just happened. That was pretty disturbing. I wouldn't think you'd want to do anything tonight. But he's like, no, take your shirt off, sort of thing. It's really uncomfortable. He suddenly flips out on her and gets really angry. He starts having this kind of very aggressive sex with her. He leaves marks on her back, and it was just really rough and not gentle and not loving or passionate or anything. And I honestly think it's because of that experience he just had with those guys. He feels like he needs to behave the way they'd want him to behave. He needs to take control and dominate her and whatever. It was just awful. Like, these two are not healthy together at all. And then she's tearful about it afterwards because she did not enjoy the experience. He was taking no time to check with her about what was good with her, and if she was enjoying herself, it was all about him and his pleasure and everything, and it was horrible. Daniel hosts a party which everyone goes to, and Rue is worrying about Jules because Jules is drinking really heavily, and Kat, meanwhile, is worried that Ethan doesn't like her. But he's saying that he wants to hang out with her again, and he's saying, why did you run off at the carnival? But she's assuming that he doesn't like her. In fact, she makes this comment like, Ethan, if you want to bang me, just tell me, but I don't do this whole boyfriend-girlfriend thing. That's never going to happen. That really upset me because, first of all, she clearly wants to be his girlfriend, but she's upset, so she's trying to reject him before he rejects her. So lame. But also, he's clearly showing interest, he's initiating, he's following up, but she's still got this pathetic story going on in her head that somehow he doesn't like her or he'll reject her, even though no guy who doesn't like you would keep following up like this. It's ridiculous. I like the idea of Kat coming into her own, because before she was worried about her body, but she learns, which is true, that it doesn't actually matter what you look like, because there will be plenty of guys out there that will want to have a relationship with you, and a lot of it is about your confidence. So she starts walking differently, holding herself differently, and then assuming that she'll be liked, and she starts getting a lot of attention. All of that is true. I like it, but I hate how obnoxious she's becoming, and I hate how she's trying to like one-up him or something, or act as if she never liked him in the first place. But then they start to hook up. Then she finds out that he's a virgin, and she starts being so freaking mean about it. Like, oh, I only like to do stuff with people who are actually experienced and know what they're doing. And it's just so awful. I cannot stand her at this point in the show. She's just awful, and it's so lame how hard she's trying to be cool. And Cassie again is doing this thing with Daniel where she's trying to impress him and seduce him because things aren't going well with McKay, so she's looking for, I guess, a bit of validation elsewhere, or maybe make herself feel good, which I know isn't a good thing to do. I know it's a mistake. I don't like the way that Daniel handles it. He wants to have sex, and she's like, no, actually, I don't want to do that. I think I'm too drunk. I'm just going to go home. Rather than him being like, okay, I feel like you were leading me on a bit, or I don't really know what you're doing, but fine. But instead he's like, what is wrong with you? Don't you know that we're gonna have sex and blah, blah, blah. And before that even, he just kept pressurizing her, like, come on, no one will know. What's the problem? It's like, if she doesn't want to sleep with you, she doesn't need to sleep with you. A no means a no, regardless of what she's doing, what their relationship is, whether she's been leading him on or not, I don't care. You can change your mind about sex at any point. She does not owe him anything. Sure, she's been flirting with him before, kissing him before. She's going to leave, and he's like, what's wrong with you? You think you're so interesting? I don't even like you. You're so boring, and guys will only want to sleep with you. They'll never actually like you. He's completely sexualizing her. He's saying that her only value is her physical appearance. And the weirdest thing is that 2 minutes ago he was saying, I really like you. I won't tell anyone we had sex. Which, by the way, he wouldn't have. He would have told his whole friends, and he would have filmed the whole thing too. But now he's being horrible to her. So it's like, you clearly never liked her, dude. If now you're being awful to her, and 2 minutes ago you were saying you really like her. Like, he's such a prat, and it's such misogyny, and it's really not that big a deal. There are a million other girls at that party, I'm sure, who'd want to sleep with him. The thing that bothers me is there were so many people like saying about this scene, to be fair, he's giving her a reality check. He's got a good point. She really shouldn't have been leading him on, or she knew what his intentions were, so she shouldn't have started kissing him, because she would have known that he would have wanted to have sex with her. It's like, oh my god. No, like, sorry, I know she was being a bit immature, but that's nothing compared to how rude he was being. He did not need to go that far or be that rude, in my opinion. And later at home, Cassie realizes that her period is late, and she worries that she might be pregnant because of like an accident. It wasn't intentional. But episode 7 follows Cassie's story, and I love this episode because it's so real. I'm not a cam girl like Kat. I'm not in a toxic relationship like Maddy, but I could relate to Cassie's story, and I think so many teen girls can too, because she has a lot of problems with her dad, and she's trying to fix it through the boys she dates. I know a lot of girls who do have really bad relationships with their family. They feel unloved, so they look for love elsewhere. It's very common, and she, I think, represents a lot of culture of slut shaming and women only being valued for their physical appearance and also being judged for their sexuality. There's this really hilarious scene, because it's so just lame, where they're showing around the nudes of Cassie in like the first episode, and Nate's saying she's a slut, and he keeps saying that throughout the show and ignoring her. And I think that's so lame, because obviously she's really beautiful. Of course he would want to sleep with her, but he's acting like he'd never want to do anything with her. But that's clearly because he knows she's so out of his league, she would never want to do anything. And I've actually had a few experiences like this in my own life. I've seen this in TV shows a lot, so I have coined a term for it, and I like to call it the burn the witch phenomenon, because it's so common. Basically, I'll explain what it is. It's where a guy sees a girl he finds really attractive. He knows subconsciously he's attracted to her, but either he's weak, or he has a girlfriend, or he feels like he could never win her, or an inferiority complex when it comes to his own worthiness. So instead of appreciating her beauty, he tries to invalidate her power. By acknowledging it, you're giving her power. So he tries to diminish her power by pretending he doesn't find her attractive, she's a slut, he doesn't even like her, and he becomes mean to her. It's actually very common, and that's what Nate is doing. He's burning the witch. And the reason I call it that is because of the Salem witch trials, you know, where women were labeled as witches and burned and discriminated against for truly no reason. Hilariously, I watched the trailer for season 2 of Euphoria, and guess what? Nate and Cassie are flirting. So of course he tries to pursue things with her in season 2, so clearly he found her attractive all along. And actually Cassie wears so much blue throughout the show, you can even see it here, and I think it's to show how lonely and sad she is. Like, she's literally got the blues all the time. And I think at one point in the final episode she wears a pink dress, and maybe that's to show she's picking herself up a little bit. But I really want Cassie to find herself in season 2 and get out of that dark place she's in. I doubt that will happen, but I'd like her to. Following a car accident, her father descended into drug addiction and poverty, and he wanted to come to the house just to steal some stuff and then leave, and then she never saw him again, so it really messed up with her concept of love, and it gave her abandonment issues. And met McKay, and it's still exploitative, even though maybe he's a bit better than other guys, not by much, you know, he's still a mess. Meanwhile, Maddy confronts Kat over her new persona. To be honest, Maddy is very selfish, and often the relationship with Kat was not an equal give and take. It was more Kat listening and giving and offering advice, and Maddy taking. Maddy called her crying and a mess, and Kat just said, sorry, I can't go and see you, because she's bringing a lot of attention onto herself now and making it about her. And yeah, I didn't love it, but I felt like it kind of makes sense. I know it's messed up, but I feel like Kat was just sick of being everyone else's emotional support animal, and she wanted to have her own thing going on, be seen as desirable herself, and so she's like, sorry, I don't have time for this anymore. Then Cassie tells McKay that she's pregnant and he's overwhelmed, and suggests that she gets an abortion. That brings up the very controversial topic of abortion and teen pregnancies, because isn't it like 10% of pregnancies worldwide are teen? It's huge. I'm glad they had it in the show, because it's so common and normal, and definitely should be talked about more often, because oh my god, by the way, I've been filming for so long, it's now getting dark outside. Often parents like, yeah sure, you can date when you're in high school, but they don't actually educate properly around protection and safe sex, and so this happens literally constantly. Rue recovers in hospital from a kidney infection in episode 8, because like many drug addicts, drugs affect your kidneys and honestly your whole body. Sometimes you can end up in a wheelchair or not being able to pee properly. Like, it's really messed up, and I like that they don't make drugs seem fun and cool, because honestly it actually ruins your life. Meanwhile, Nate is unable to get an erection, literally cannot get it up, and Maddy's like, what's going on? She's not even being mean about it, she's just like, you know, it's okay if you swing both ways or whatever, sexuality is a spectrum. And he's like, what's that supposed to mean? Nah. And he gets so mean with her and storms off. He's horrible. Maddy steals the video of Cal and Jules that Nate has in his possession. The video of Cal hooking up with Jules, who's underage, right? And she's shocked by what she sees. Nate wins his high school football thing, but his father criticizes his performance, and it escalates into a physical fight. That was one of the best scenes in the show. It was so raw. Then Nate begins to hit himself, bang his own head against the floor, to the point that his father backs off because Nate will hurt himself, and Nate's just such a mess. You realize how much he hates his father, and how much all of this behavior really goes down to the fact that he has avoided healing this trauma he has about his father. And it was heart-wrenching, because it was the first scene that I saw that Nate isn't like pure evil. He's got a heart and a soul. He genuinely is just a disturbed kid. His acting was unbelievable in this scene. It was incredible. Where's the awards? Like, unreal. Kat seeks out Ethan and apologizes for her behavior, and he confesses that despite all her weird behavior, he liked her since the day he met her, and it's very cute, but I don't think things will stay that way in season 2. But so far, so good. It's very sweet. Rue confronts Nate. Where's Rue? Rue confronts Nate, and she threatens to expose Cal the dad, and she basically says, leave my friend Jules alone, stop blackmailing her. And it's really funny. Nate insults Rue, and then he adds on, oh, but you look really beautiful, by the way. I love that Nate is such a misogynist that he could hate you, but if you look beautiful, because it's so important as a woman to look good at all times, he will let you know. It's quite funny. It's so insulting. It's actually more insulting than if he just insulted her. Somehow it's worse to insult her and then leave a compliment and be like, by the way, you look really beautiful, as if she needs his approval. Like, oh my god, thank you, Nate. Do I? Thanks for letting me know. Then Nate and Maddy spend the whole night trying to one-up each other and trying to make each other jealous and flirt with other people, and eventually they have a heart-to-heart, and Maddy's like, look, you're sociopathic and toxic and you make me feel like shit 90% of the time, you're not good for me. And he's like, I know. And they decide to end their relationship, although I'm sure things will get toxic again very soon, but they kind of realize they're not good for each other. Rue and Jules decide to leave town together, and they're deciding to run away together, which is again, you know, unhealthy, rash, impulsive, not a good idea. And then Rue realizes that maybe Jules isn't the best influence on her, and she says maybe we just shouldn't do that. And then Jules isn't listening, and she's like, yeah, this is your idea, let's go. And then Rue was like, no, Jules, please listen, I don't think this is a good idea. Like, it's not gonna happen, it's not realistic. And then Rue backs out at the last minute, and Jules leaves on the train alone. So it's heartbreaking, but honestly, I think important to say, actually, sorry, I've got to set a boundary somewhere. Like, we can't just live in this fantasy Lula land. This is the real world, and we can't just run away together. Rue returns home and she snorts, what's it called? Oxycodone. I don't know. Okay, I'm not a drug dealer. I don't know what all these words are. I don't even know what that is. Rue experiences a very vivid and almost musical hallucination with all these different people, and it's very intense, and then it leaves her fate unknown. You don't know whether she's going to end up in the hospital. You know, she's really high, but like, is she gonna die? Some people were even theorizing that she dies. I don't know, but like, it's kind of ambiguous as to what happens to her, but you can see that she's very much not over her drug addiction. One thing I like about the show, I like that they don't just say, yeah, she went to rehab once and she's all good now. I like that they're saying, no, she's addicted, and when you're an addict, it's really hard to stop. And I feel like the show deals with a lot of addiction in many different forms, actually. Like, Cassie is addicted to love and to being approved of, right? These two are addicted to each other. They're a right mess. Rue does face a lot of consequences for her actions. Like, when her mum thinks she's high, she gets angry and yells at her, and you know, she's told off. There's conflict, there's confrontation. She can't just avoid it. But I swear with the other characters, 90% of the time, they're putting themselves in these really dangerous situations or sending nudes or whatever. And either the parents don't know about it, or there's no kind of accountability, so they just manage to not have their parents intervene and just avoid those situations. And I know Euphoria is meant to be like a warning, don't do this, or we need to be having these difficult conversations with our children about what high school is really like or something. I know that's the intention the show has, but to be honest, it doesn't feel like that. It just feels like kind of glamorizing sex with teenagers, glamorizing making teenagers look way hotter than they actually are, more giving you a tutorial on how to be a messy teenager, like a step-by-step manual, which isn't, I know what they were going for, but it honestly comes across that way. And I know they're saying don't do this, but somehow, because they're showing it, it's kind of actually endorsing it and encouraging it, even though they're saying don't do it. I think also the show doesn't really have a sense of humor. There's not really jokes, there's not a contrast between the highs and the lows. Like, I'm watching Arcane to do a review of that, and it has really high highs and really low lows, right? Which makes the contrast more extreme. But with this show, it's just one dark thing to another, just a lot of heaviness throughout. So it almost makes you not realize how bad it is, because by the third episode, you're so used to it. Like in the first episode, when I started watching it, I hadn't adjusted yet. So I was like, oh my God, this is a lot. What is this? This is like a lot to absorb. This is very intense. But by the third one, I was like, this is just the show, and I was used to it, which maybe again isn't a good thing. I do think there are people who are weirdly obsessed with this show or with their favorite shows in general. Like, there are definitely some really solid things about this show, but it's definitely not perfect, and I like to recognize what I believe rubbed me the wrong way, and I'm okay to recognize that, you know, but some people just want to claim that it's perfect and it's not. But I am fascinated to see whether season 2 will be better or not, so I'm going to be reacting to it episode by episode and posting my reactions here and on TikTok and probably on Instagram too. So make sure you follow me, guys, because it's going to be a wild ride, a proper roller coaster, and I'm so excited to share with you my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments, and make sure you subscribe, because we're at 30,000 now. Hopefully we'll get to 50,000 very soon. So if you want to be here before 50,000, click the bell icon, and then also you get all notifications. Otherwise YouTube doesn't notify you. People tell me, oh my gosh, you posted this video I wanted to watch 3 months ago and I didn't even see it or get notified. So that's why you say all notifications. Very important. But I love you guys, and I will see you for my next video.